All right. Today we're going to read about the Spanish-American War and its consequences. It's your second assignment for Wednesday. You were supposed to do 10 minutes of Membean. And then actually it's your third assignment. The second assignment, you were to watch the video about our next unit, which is American imperialism. And then as you watch that video, you are to take notes in your notebook or in a Google Doc. And then this is your third assignment for Wednesday. You are to read this short article about the Spanish-American War. Take notes. If I were you, my suggestion is to take detailed notes because you will probably definitely be assessed over what we're about to read about, which is the war and its consequences. So let's go ahead and start reading. It says, the Spanish-American War and its consequences. The United States was simply unprepared for war. What Americans had in enthusiastic spirit, they lacked in military strength. The Navy, although improved, was simply a shadow of what it would become by World War I. The United States Army was understaffed, under-equipped, under-trained. The most recent action seen by the Army was fighting the Native Americans on the frontier. Cuba required summer uniforms. The U.S. troops arrived with heavy woolen coats and pants. The food budget paid for substandard provisions for the soldiers. What made these daunting problems? Hold on, I think I need to try to move this picture. There we go. It's too big. Whoa. My bad, I'm sorry. It says, what made these daunting problems more manageable was one simple reality. Spain was even less ready for war than the United States. So whatever you feel like is important for this section, you might want to pay attention to that Americans lacked military strength in this. Even though our Navy had improved, we still aren't as good as we were by the time World War I rolled around. And the United States Army was understaffed, under-equipped, and under-trained. And the last part that you should probably highlight is about the part where Spain wasn't really prepared either for this war. So let's look at the Battle of Manila. Prior to the building of the Panama Canal, each nation required a two-ocean navy. The major portion of Spain's Pacific Fleet was located in the Spanish Philippines at Manila Bay. Under orders from Assistant Secretary of the Navy Theodore Roosevelt, Admiral George Dewey descended upon the Philippines prior to the declaration of war. Dewey was in the perfect position to strike, and when given his orders to attack on May 1st, 1898, the American Navy was ready. Those who look back with fondness on American military triumphs must count the Battle of Manila Bay as one of the greatest success stories. The larger wooden Spanish fleet was no match for the newer American Navy steel. So we have our Navy advancements. When we fight against Spain's wooden ships, that's what a wooden Spanish fleet means. Their ships were made of wood. They were no match for our newer American steel Navy. After Dewey's guns stopped firing, the entire Spanish squadron was a hulking disaster. The only American casualty came from sunstroke. Sunstroke is where you get overheated because you're out in the hot sun for too long. The Philippines remained in Spanish control until the army had been recruited, trained, and transported to the Pacific. So be aware that the Spanish had control of the Philippines until the United States went in and took the Philippines over through military force. The next section is about invading Cuba. The situation in Cuba was far less pretty for the Americans. At the outbreak of the war, the United States was outnumbered 7-1 in Army personnel. The invading force, led by General William Shafter, landed rather uneventfully near Santiago. The real glory of the Cuban campaign was grabbed by you probably have heard this, the Rough Riders, comprising of cowboys, adventurous college students, and ex-convicts. The Rough Riders were a volunteer regiment commanded by Leonard Wood, but organized by Theodore Roosevelt. Supported by two African-American regiments, the Rough Riders charged up San Juan Hill and helped Shafter bottle the Spanish forces in the Santiago harbor. The war was lost when the Spanish Atlantic Fleet was destroyed by the pursuing American forces. And lastly is the Treaty of Paris. The Treaty of Paris was most generous to the winners. The United States received the Philippines and the islands of Guam and Puerto Rico. Cuba became independent, and Spain was awarded $20 million for its losses. So the Treaty of Paris is, it's the final war agreement at the end of the Spanish-American War. So like we just read, the United States received the Philippines, they received Guam and Puerto Rico, Cuba became independent, and then Spain was awarded $20 million for its losses. The treaty prompted a heated debate in the United States. Anti-imperialists called the U.S. hypocritical for condemning European empires while pursuing one of its own. The war was supposed to be about freeing Cuba, not seizing the Philippines. Criticism increased when Filipino rebels led by Emilio Aguinaldo waged a 3-year insurrection against their new American colonizers. While the Spanish-American War lasted 10 weeks and resulted in 400 battle deaths, the Philippine insurrection lasted nearly 3 years and claimed 4,000 American lives. Nevertheless, President McKinley's expansionist policies were supported by the American public, who seemed more than willing to accept the blessings and curses of their new expanding empire. So if you need to reread this again, make sure that you take notes in your notebook after you watch. They should go right along with the video that you watched before reading this article. And then make sure you submit your notes for the video and for the reading to the UC assignment titled Group A Imperialism Notes. All right, see you later.